All right. Welcome, guys. Thanks for coming in. Cool. Well, we'll kick it off just with, I think, a question for everybody. You've all run different growth campaigns that brought serious amounts of capital on chain. Without naming any specific numbers, what is the pattern? Like when you look back at campaigns that actually were sticky and moved the needle, what separated those?
I'll just go in row order here.
Any
Okay.
order, popcorn.
I think it actually had very little to do with the campaign or how it was orchestrated. I think one thing you see across all successful liquidity mining campaigns is that they had a good product. And I think a lot of times people will either, basically start these campaigns too early before they really have product market fit, and they basically misdirect them. But the ones that have gone well are when people, they know they have a good product, they know what use case users are most interested in using it for, and then they use these incentives to get over these cold start problems that many marketplaces and two-sided platforms run into. So it's product quality is the one thing I think is really is what you see across all successful campaigns.
Do you think there's some experimentation that happens there that's needed, or is it like, hey, once you have PMF, your campaigns are going to stick?
As someone who's thought they had PMF when they didn't a few times in their life, there is like an epistemological concern there where, knowing you have PMF is a determination you make, not something you discover. So, you got to be careful there. But I think a lot of times you'll know that when you start spending money on growth and you see users sticking around, then you have the right hypothesis of what your product should do and how it should help people.
Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. Incentives are great for getting people in the door. They're great for showcasing your product. I mean, everybody loves free shit, right? But if you're not looking under the hood, if you're not looking at what's happening like organically or at least somewhat segmented away from those incentives, you don't know if you've hit product market fit or not. And when those incentives run out, and they will run out, what's left, right? When the tide rolls out, who's still kind of waiting by their knees, that kind of thing. And ultimately, I think the big thing is, are you solving somebody's problem or not? And if you are, the incentives will leave and people will just stay because you're actually solving their problem, right? So that's the number one thing is get people in the door, make sure you're still solving their problem. And if you're not ready to bring people in the door and solve their problems, then wait. It's okay, right? You probably only have one opportunity to use incentives in a Web3 setting.
NK, any lessons from the Soneium side?
We have experienced that institutional liquidity is a lot less sticky compared with the retail liquidity. So if we were to launch another cohort of the campaign for the liquidity bootstrap, we will be focusing how do we deliver the message of liquidity campaign is happening in our ecosystem to the retail community. And another thing that is important is about the utility or yield generation of the liquidity within the ecosystem. There are clear success cases such as certain AMMs and also the money market protocol that finds a different risk appetite of the investors who want to deposit their liquidity in those cases. Even after the ecosystem-wide liquidity incentive, those liquidity remain to be sticky within the ecosystem. So I would say retail liquidity and also finding a right level of the risk appetite for each of the protocol for those retail liquidity is crucial to have a sticky liquidity in the ecosystem.
Yeah, so solving the right problem for the right user with the right risk appetite in there. Nick, one for you. So Inc. is reporting 80% plus user retention, which is, I think, uncommon in an industry where we know capital is mercenary and people move on quickly. What are you doing differently to keep people engaged after those incentive ends?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we're doing too is, I think, somewhat unique in the space because we do have Kraken as a partner, right? Inc. and Kraken are partnering together. And so what are we using Inc. for? What are we using the DeFi Mullet for? It's we're solving people's problems and we're giving them access to yield and opportunities on a centralized exchange space that they can't get or are too afraid to go get in DeFi themselves. And so what ends up happening is people are using a product like DeFi Earn. We're eventually going to launch a DeFi Borrow product where, if you have like Bitcoin assets or X stocks and you want to borrow stables against them, you'll be able to do that as well through Tidro, which is our Aave white label on Inc. And so I think a lot of that is they sometimes don't even realize they're using DeFi. And because they don't even realize they're using DeFi, we're solving their problems for them, and they're not even aware of what's happening under the hood. And I think that obfuscation layer really helps a lot.
Yeah, I think your users might maybe be a little bit more crypto native coming from the Kraken side. And Soneium is really trying to onboard mainstream entertainment audience and users, people who've maybe never even used a wallet before. What does a growth campaign look like when your target user doesn't even know what a blockchain is? Do they even need to?
Yes, I think there are a couple of the important things when you're trying to onboard the user base that we are currently targeting, which is completely different with what other blockchains are normally targeting. Number one is the user experience. We have launched a application named Startel App, which is ecosystem-wide global wallet for the Soneium ecosystem, fully enabled by the account abstraction. So this is a Web2 like the user experience from the onboarding experiences. And because of this reason, users do not realize whether it's a blockchain or crypto. Of course, from the normal crypto native perspectives, it might be not actually a good thing that people are not realizing this is a blockchain. But also at the same time, for us to onboard the user base of the Soneium, it was crucial for us to provide the Web2 like user experiences. And second thing is about the use cases or utility that the blockchain can deliver. If we look into the space, most of the focuses are heavily on the DeFi use cases, especially either it's earning or the trading, which is of course cool for the crypto native person like myself, but also at the same time, this is only suitable for the small number of the people in the globe of the entire population. Therefore, we are trying to provide an infrastructure and applications that are providing a good utility for the user base and also the creators of the entertainment ecosystem, who'd be able to tap into the global audiences that Soneium currently has and also the broader Sony ecosystem currently has, which is a value proposition that Soneium tries to provide. So focusing on those user experiences and providing a clear utility or use case are important when we design our campaigns.
John, you're probably the total opposite end of that spectrum, running a DeFi protocol. What are you thinking about? And especially we have, two specific chain operators, whereas Gauntlet's across, at least a dozen chains? Like, are you thinking about things differently for different ecosystems, or what's top of mind?
Yeah, I think when you're multi-ecosystem, I think you just got to figure out how to time your efforts with the ecosystem's efforts. If that gets out of sync, then, they'll be doing liquidity campaigns or something like that, like right before you launch a new product. And like a lot of times you want to align those things. So I think it's just like, staying in close contact with all the different places where you're active and trying to coordinate your efforts because, the best or the it's back. The most successful growth campaigns are going to involve both the protocol in which people are especially within DeFi at the very least. It's going to involve the protocol in which people are actually, depositing and making money, as well as the underlying ecosystem. So yeah, it's aligning those efforts is always something you want to keep in mind.
Do you feel like you guys have insights from working across these ecosystems that you kind of push out of like, hey, we think this has worked? Or are you more taking direction of like different ecosystems maybe require different things? We're going to stay in line with what you guys are working on?
Gauntlet, there's no shortage of strong opinions about what not to do when running a liquidity mining campaign. But yeah, I just think for the most part, working with partners, we're always willing to lend the expertise that we have, if you'll call it that. And a lot of times it's just, hey, do we have the right focus? Are we sort of sequencing things correctly? And, hey, are we in a real position to attract sticky liquidity or, capital that's really going to stick around?
So, when we're talking about growth, we're often talking about users and liquidity. These are things that we've touched on. But, what about driving developer growth and developer acquisition? Like, how does that play into things? Nick, Kraken, you guys have already solved part of that.
Yeah, having Kraken really helps. But then the message that comes from having Kraken helps. If you are attached to a distribution partner, like Kraken and Inc. essentially are attached to the hip, that means liquidity and users are going to naturally flow to you on Inc. I think that's the same thing with Base. I think that's the same thing with Robinhood chain that's about to launch. Maybe Revolut launches a chain one day. And so these distribution partner chains, I think, are going to have, I don't want to say an unfair advantage, but they're going to have a baked-in value prop about why you should build on Inc. If you're building something really cool and you just need some network effect, just need some liquidity, you just need some users to get it going, if you have a distribution partner, that's going to be much easier to kickstart that, right? And maybe you don't need as much of an incentive, a token to jumpstart you. Maybe that'll mask a little bit of product market friction to start, something like that. So any developers in the crowd, come reach out and come build on Ink.
So I think, we've touched on a little bit of when things are going well, what to do, but I think, John, back to you. Gauntlet has seen data across a lot of these. So what are the ways when things go wrong? What are the ways that you shouldn't run a liquidity campaign?
So I can come out and first wholeheartedly deny that any of the companies that have ever worked with Gauntlet on their liquidity mining campaigns I can say they've made no mistakes. But
flawless execution all around.
But that being said, lots of people have run liquidity minings without us, however ill-advised that liquidity mining campaigns without us, however ill-advised that may be. But what are the things that people have done wrong? I think going too early. I think another thing too is actually turning on incentives too high, because you get this thing where you can imagine a lot of times when people are also trying to solve cold start problems, I don't know, with a DoorDash or something, they'll say, hey, we'll get you $5 off your burrito or something to increase volume so that drivers are kept busy and things like that. But you realize what's happening a lot in DeFi is not hey, we'll give you a discount on your burrito. It's we will pay you to eat a burrito. And I think when you realize doing it, hey, you have to pay people, right? People have opportunity cost, right? So you have to be competitive. But you got to remember what you're doing is a really strong incentive. And you're going to bring all sorts of people that are just not interested in what you're doing long term. And so, yeah, tuning incentives to the right level, understanding user elasticities, and those elasticities for the right types of users that actually care about your product. That's what's going to allow you to be successful over time. So, I think people really do forget how strong of an incentive it is when you're just paying people to keep your money in something, and a lot of times it can really muffle the signal you get from your users on what they actually want and what's going to work long term. So,
are you buying burritos for all of us after this?
Yeah, sure. Meet me out back. Yeah.
NK, you were nodding your head there a little bit. Any kind of things that you, maybe not from your experience or things that you've seen that you would also be hesitant to do again or want people to avoid?
We think it's better not to focus too much on the short-term on-chain metrics, the numbers that appear on the dashboard, like the L2Bit or DeFi Llama, for example. We also had a similar mistake in the beginning of the launch phase where we wanted to impress the industry that Sony is coming on chain, Sony is making a Web3 ecosystem, and we tried to win everything from the DeFi, consumer, entertainment, every use case that we tried to win. But the reality is that each of the chain has its own moat and its purpose or reason for the existence. So if we were to start it from the all over the gap, which we are now trying to do this for this year, we are now focusing on why Sony Group needs to build a blockchain or Web3 ecosystem and what kind of value proposition that we can provide for the creators or entertainment companies. So for the growth side, rather than chasing the metrics that are considered as a growth metrics for the Web3 native industry, it is important to set your own growth goal and also determine the growth path based on your own goal and your moat, your purpose of the blockchain while you are building that.
Nick, anything to avoid, or do you think you covered it?
No, I think they covered it at that point. It's I think we're coming to a world where incentives are going to be hard to come by to begin with, and I think we're going to look back at this time as a deviation from how you grow a business. How often do you get to just create tokens out of thin air, which all of a sudden are worth $200 or $300 million? And you could pay people to come try out your product. Most of the time, you're raising. It's a small round. If it's a few $1 million, you have to pay your employees. How are you able to incentivize users at that point, right? And so I think as long as the getting's good, keep trying to incentivize people to get them in the door. But it won't be like that forever. And it really is about getting back to basics and getting back to growth tactics that revolve around product first.
I think that gets to a good point, which a lot of the panels today have touched on, is getting to a point of maturity and talking about building for enterprises and building real businesses. Do you guys think that the lessons learned from growth campaigns for maybe crypto native users, is that going to translate as we get more into Web 2 and mainstream?
I don't think it will, to be honest. I don't know if that's a hot take or not. The way I look at it is kind of what Kalshi and Polymarket are doing today. No tokens, no incentives. They're just going right to Web 2 tactics with some very expensive commercials and high quality commercials on mainstream channels like live events, sports, that kind of stuff. So the second that they decided that they weren't going the token and incentivization route, and maybe they drop one still at some point to reward loyalty or early adopters, even though I don't think they need to at this point. They are already engaged in classic Web 2 tactics that started when the commercial started, when TV kind of started in what 30s or 40s or whatever it was. And so Web 2 tactics, I think, are going to be really important moving forward. They probably will stop being called Web 2 tactics, and they'll be called marketing again at some point, whenever the incentives dry up.
I'll take the other side of that a little bit. I still think that distributing ownership to your users is a key innovation of DeFi and crypto. It is just so cool that when you're starting a new product, and a product that has a community of users, that you can kind of give them ownership in it and give them ownership over it easily without having them to sign, having to sign like, an NSO grant or something like that, which would be really hard to do at scale. But yeah, to the other points made on the panel, like just the unending retail demand to buy these tokens really inflated the market in a way that like really got token incentives away from what I think could be successful long term, which is, hey, I'm giving ownership to the people that are helping me build this protocol, this community, et cetera. And then it got just into something where, hey, we're just going to actually distribute incentives really quickly. People will dump them on retail, and hopefully eventually we'll figure it all out before retail gets hosed, which rarely happened. Like, that was not working. And so I will totally concede that that's just not going to continue. But I do think there was something really cool about distributing ownership to users. And it did make me smile when Uniswap gave me a bunch of Uniswap tokens on their airdrop, because I'd been, toiling away using Uniswap when they had a broken user interface back in 2020 and things, or 2019 and things like that. So anyway, I still think it's a cool thing that we got to figure out as a space.
Yeah, take the nuggets of what worked and, trash the rest. All right, I think we got to wrap up, but any last words of wisdom from the panelists for this audience of builders who are probably trying to grow their own protocols or ecosystems?
Incentive does not create the product market fit, but incentive exists in the both Web 2 and Web 3. And the only difference between crypto and the traditional industry is whether you are able to provide a stake of the protocol to the users. And that's the power of the token that we still believe. However, I think the industry has been too immersed in about the tokenomics or design of the incentive rather than thinking about the creating an application that actually has a market fit. So this is actually advice to ourselves. Soneium this year commits to find the entertainment use cases that does have a product market fit, and also leveraging the token to get the right people incentivized to have their skin in the game.
All right.
That's it.
Final words. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.